I was just sitting here, like, just in the same spot for like 10 seconds, figuring out how to open up the video, and I still have no idea how to do it. So, I'm gonna go over the reworked swords in pre-hard mode because I think that they deserve some spotlight. So, I'm gonna give them a spotlight. And also, I mean, it's been like 8 or 9 days since the update came out or something. And like, I mean, who needs a video going over the hard mode swords? I'm sure that these have been featured somewhere in there as well, but you know, they're all overshadowed by the Terraria, right? All the time. Like, who cares about any of these when you can just go watch about how cool the Terra Blade is, right? Let's put that away because that's not the star of our show this episode. I say like it's a TV series or something. We have these swords though, and I wanted to showcase them because I thought that the changes were really cool. All of them were like minimal, but I thought that that was really good. I thought it was smart because they're pre-hard mode swords, and you know, it's before all the weapons get super flashy and super overpowered and blah blah blah, right? They were all made, or I guess they were all given new mechanics, some of them similar mechanics, but new mechanics and very much increased viability. In fact, I would say that, like, I mean, you could blanket term that all of the the viability of all of these swords has been increased by like at least 50%. Like, their effective damage, I would imagine, has probably been increased by like 50% baseline about for all of them. And you know, if something's damage is increased by 50%, I think that you can also, you know, conjecture that the viability of that thing has now increased by at least 50%. It might not have been that viable to begin with, but it's 50% more viable than it already was. So none of these actually say what they do, which, you know, is a little bit not like misleading, but let me see if I can actually find the changes somewhere on my phone really quick. Bro, I'm actually just jamming to the mushroom biome music right now. I don't know if I'll actually leave it in the video because I might just want something different, but it's jamming right now, bro. Terraria music is awesome. So I am on the area that I want to be. I guess we'll just go in order in which they appear, so that I can go over all of them. But we have Bane first in the patch notes. So basically, its damage got reduced a little bit, but it generates a short-range diagonal slash of darkness every time the sword is swung, dealing half of the base damage of Bane. What it used to be is literally just a sword. You swing it and you hit someone with it, and that's all that Bane did. It was just a sword. Now, when you hit something, I believe it doesn't do anything. No, it does. It shows it if you do that too. I mean, okay, look at this. This is so cool. It increases the damage a lot. You're effectively, like, how much does it do? Half the base damage. So every swing, you're dealing 150% damage if both your swing and the slash hits an enemy. So your damage got reduced a little bit, but you're dealing way more damage overall. I would assume anything in the slash gets hit. Like, as you saw, like, I wasn't even hitting the dummy and it got hit by like one of the bigger slashes. It's simple, but it's so cool. And like, I assume you can like AoE enemies with this. It looks dope. It just does way more damage. I can't say how useful it will be, but it almost acts as a projectile too, and kind of like a wall. And that honestly is probably the second tamest of the changes, which is kind of wild. And I mean, that's so cool. But like, again, like I said towards the beginning of the video, it's sort of minimal, but it's done in such a way by the devs. Like, it's minimal, but it's so awesome to me. And I know, like, you know, I think it's awesome because of how just utterly bland that the weapon was before, and they just added this little twist to it that makes it so much more like applicable and interesting in general. And it gives it more of an identity, right? Like, it does this thing now. Like, it's just dope. I don't know. I could just rave for minutes on end, and I kind of already have. But onto the Blood Butcherer. This is the one out of these weapons that didn't actually receive a rework, quote unquote, in the patch notes, which is an interesting thing to note. The Blood Butcherer, basically, though, every time you hit an enemy, it stacks a stack of Blood Butchered, which is like the effect that it gives, I guess, or like a debuff, I suppose, which is a damage over time effect. And it stacks up to 5 times and deals 4 damage over time, which allows you to deal a maximum of 20 damage over time. And they last for 9 seconds. So basically, every time you hit an enemy with this, it does not stack on dummies. I'm gonna have to find something else to test this on. Every time you hit them, you can see this like blood spurt, right? And then it does it, you know, like once every 2-3 seconds. No, that's every second, isn't it? That's damage per second. But you can stack this up to 5 times, and as you can see, it just deals damage over time. I think this is the least interesting of all of the changes, honestly. Like, it's very basic. It doesn't make the weapon that much more applicable because it doesn't help the issues with the weapon, really, which is that it's kind of, you know, it's short range. It's hard to, like, kind of hard to use. It's clunky, which is something that is partially answered with the change to Light's Bane, in my opinion, since this is sort of a buffer against enemies and also gives a little bit of a, like, dynamic range to the weapon, which is not the case with the Blood Butcher. However, I think it's still a cool change. It definitely increases the damage of the weapon, like, by a lot. That's just an extra 20 damage every second that is added onto the weapon. The stats were not changed in any way, so, you know, sure. The next one we're going to check out is, I think, the much memed upon Muramasa. You know, it's basic. It's not that good. It got like a 2 damage buff in 1.4, and that was so memed upon. It was funny, but it's like, come on, man. It's it was still so bad. Like, you couldn't use it, dude. You might actually be able to now. So the damage was reduced back to its original, like, amount that it was pre 1.4, but upon striking an enemy, Muramasa will generate an additional slashing cut over the affected target, dealing half of the base damage of Muramasa. I don't know if this can, it was so quick too. I mean, like, look at that. But like, you can see this, like, it has a slashing thing every single time. I don't know if this amount of this is so much damage for, like, I know that I have hard mode items, but that's a lot of damage for a pre-hard mode sword. Like, can I get that, like, towards that much damage with Light's Bane? So, I mean, like, you're getting, like, you know, 100 something damage with, like, the setup I have, potentially, like, 100-ish, which is, you know, pretty good for the point in the game that you'll get Light's Bane, although you're not going to be doing that much because you're not going to have the setup that I have, clearly. Like, I have beetle armor on right now. It's very hard to tell if this is actually going to be a useful item because the range is not changed. Honestly, though, looking at that, it has, like, 3 times the Light's Bane's damage, and that's a lot of damage. It has, like, similar range. I guess it's like if you're critting, you get that much. I'm getting up to 300 DPS, which is impressive. You can also generate the cut that this thing makes on multiple enemies if you hit multiple enemies at once, which you can also do with Light's Bane, I would assume. Like, you can hit multiple enemies with this slash. I mean, like, this has a lot of damage potential now. Like, it's a lot. I don't know how good it's actually going to be because it's still a close range melee weapon when it comes down to it, and that's not going to change, and that fact is a problem with it. You know, it is what it is, but it's doing a lot of damage when I test it out, so it might have some application. It's definitely way stronger than it was before. Next up, we have the Blade of Grass, which got a lot of reworks. The damage was reduced, the use time was reduced, so it swings faster, does less damage. The knockback was increased, the crafting recipe was changed. It inflicts poison, which got buffed to do like 3 times the damage that it used to do, so the debuff effect that the Blade of Grass gives is also stronger. And it, like, per the rework, it has a special mechanic too, which it fires an upward spiraling razor leaf from the sword with every swing. And it does low damage, but ignores a substantial amount of defense, ensuring that it inflicts damage reliably. And I read that second part because I had forgotten about the defense reducing part. But you can actually test this one without having to hit actual enemies. As you can see, it inflicts poison, and it has a projectile. And honestly, I mean, this might be strong. Does Muramasa just straight up do more damage than the Blade of Grass? It does so much more damage. What the hell? why does Muramasa do so much damage? It's bizarre. I guess you can get this sooner than Muramasa, so maybe never mind. I don't know. I'm out of my mind, dude. But anyways, Blade of Grass, I mean, like, this was basically, like, useless before, right? It was just a big sword that could inflict poison. And now it has a projectile, and it's kind of like, I mean, like, it covers area, right? Like, it'll cover the area around you if you're moving into it. It'll just hit enemies in front of you, and it looks like it'll just, I don't know how much it pierces, but I assume it will pierce. But any enemy in that arc, it will hit. So I mean, this is so much better for just zoning out everything around you than it was before. Having a projectile should give it more damage. You just inflict like more poison. It'll just be easier to keep enemies away with, which is like what I mean by saying that it's better for zoning. I think this will actually be fairly useful because I think it'll deal, you know, half decent damage. I don't think the damage has ever really been the problem with the Blade of Grass. There's always been better weapons as far as damage goes, so it may be more in line with them now, those better weapons. But also it has way more utility, and the debuff it, you know, inflicts is exceedingly better. So the Blade of Grass, I've never really had any sort of connection with this item because it's just always been exceedingly boring. I just use exceedingly twice, like within a couple sentences, and it's really triggering me inside. Very cool. I like the Blade of Grass change. We got two more. This video is going to be way too long. We have Volcano, which was the fiery greatsword, which I can now remember, quote unquote, remember because I'm reading it on the patch notes. So basically, it swings slower, but it has a new effect, and those are the only changes to it aside from its name changing. I don't know if you can activate it on a dummy. You can't. So let's go find an enemy. Basically, though, you'll hit with the sword when you hit something, and also you will, man, why is there no enemies anywhere? It's because I'm in a town. Yeah, that's right. You generate this explosion when you hit enemies. I'm pretty sure both the explosion and the sword will hit. So if you're hitting both of these, it doesn't matter that the sword swings a little slower. You're going to be dealing a lot more damage than before, overall. And it's an AoE now, so, well, I mean, you know, AoE, I think you can always hit multiple enemies with a sword, but the explosion is an AoE, so you hit an enemy with this big-ass sword, and wherever it hits, an AoE shows up. A wild AoE has appeared, you know? So, I mean, you can see, these are hard mode enemies, and I am kind of mowing them down. Early hard mode enemies, granted, they're hard mode Crimson enemies, but absolutely mowed by the Volcano, and Derplings are actually kind of scary. Herplings. Derplings are the jungle ones. I mean, this weapon is fucking dangerous, man. Like, it's also just really cool, really satisfying, as you can see. I mean, you're just creating explosions. That's dope. But I don't know what you'll really be able to use this one on. I don't know if you can use it on bosses or anything. I think only a couple of these will actually be applicable for bosses. But you can certainly use this just as a general weapon for clearing enemies now, because it's just way more effective than before. Fiery Greatsword has always just kind of been like a weapon where I'm like, you know, it's a big flame sword. That's cool, but it's kind of garbage. So, you know, now it's actually useful. And I think I spoiled this one or two times. We're just gonna move straight on, barrel past the Volcano, straight to the Knight's Edge, which is kind of the big one. And it's cool. So for a pre-hard mode sword, this looks like what the hard mode swords are doing, and that's because it is what the hard mode swords are doing. In the patch notes section, it says that it now has an area of damaging energy around the blade, dealing damage in a larger, wider area of effect, including better coverage behind the player. So that's a general change that was applied to a lot of the hard mode swords to make them better, to just make the sword part of them better. So it, you know, the area that the whole sword hits is wider. I'm starting to lose my mind here, you can kind of tell. So that was given to Knight's Edge, so you have that on a pre-hard mode sword. And as well, the swing radius spins around a second time in the direction of the player's aim, increasing the range of the weapon's forward reach to short to medium range. So basically, the swing that you do kind of just like happens again. It's like a phantom swing, and it'll just, it'll increase the range a little bit, and it kind of like it looks like it increases the range a little bit as it dissipates. But like, look at this effect for like a pre-hard mode item. This is so cool. And just going to be honest, I mean, this is nuts. First of all, it does a lot of damage. Like, this is a lot of damage for a pre-hard mode sword. This area of effect is huge for something in pre-hard mode. And yeah, it's the end of pre-hard mode, but still, it's huge. Like, this is going to be a weapon that you can use for everything now. Whereas Knight's Edge before, I mean, it was kind of bad. It was just a sword. It did a decent amount of damage, but it was just a sword. Now, it's a way bigger sword. It does the same amount of damage. You can use this for fighting, I think, all the bosses in pre-hard mode. I don't think a single one will give you trouble with this item. Like, the mobility of, like, Queen Bee or something might be a bit of an issue because she can stay out of your range somewhat. But even then, I think just with the amount of reach that this thing has, you can still manage to do it fine. I think you will shred the wall of flesh with this weapon. Like, if you can stay out of the range of like the mouths and stuff, the hungry are going to just die immediately to this item. I mean, I just, it's perfectly good for everything that you need, and it looks like an actual like grand sword now that you're crafting all the other items into. I think it's so cool. Like, the Knight's Edge, I mean, it feels like a hard mode item in pre-hard mode, and I love what they did with this. The effects aren't as awesome as like, Terra Blade, but for what it is, I mean, it's so cool. And I've said that so many times. I'm just gushing over these changes and these weapons, but I just think they're so awesome. I just wanted to make a video highlighting this. It's gonna be way too long. The recording is 30 minutes, and I've just been like talking the whole time. So we'll see what actually makes it into the video. But I hope that you did enjoy this one. If you have more, suggestions for things for me to look at, please leave them down below. I mean, I don't know. It's so cool. It makes me excited talking about this stuff, and these changes that they implemented into the game. And I think I already said that that's it for the video, but that's it for the video. Unless I didn't say that and I'm actually losing my mind, which I might be. But I don't know how to follow that up. God, I'm so dumb. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.